If we were writing all the same kind of songs, but we're all writing different songs, so it keeps us interested. So that was interesting enough for us to carry on.
On August 16, 1986, Freddie Mercury stepped onto the stage for what would become his final performance. Against his doctor's urgent warnings, not to sing, not to strain himself, he took the mic. Even as his voice was already beginning to falter, the air was electric, the crowd unaware they were witnessing the end of an era. But during the haunting notes of Who Wants to Live Forever, tragedy struck. One fan collapsed and never got back up. What happened next left everyone reeling. Deacon erupted in a fit of rage backstage, and Mercury vanished immediately after the curtain fell, slipping away into the night. This is the untold story of Queen's final concert. The chaos, the heartbreak, and the secrets hidden behind the spotlight. A tough childhood. Freddie Mercury was not born Freddie Mercury. He was born Farrokh Bulsara on the 5th of September 1946 in Stone Town, Zanzibar, then a British protectorate and now part of Tanzania. His parents, Bomi and Jer Bulsara, were proud members of the Parsi community, originally from Western India. The Bulsaras traced their roots back to Bulsar, now known as Valsad, in the state of Gujarat. Farrokh had a younger sister named Kashmira, born in 1952, who would remain close to him throughout his life. The family moved to Zanzibar so Bomi could continue working as a cashier at the British Colonial Office, a stable job in a land far removed from India. As devout Zoroastrians, the Bulsaras followed the traditions of their ancient Persian faith, though Farrokh would later drift from religion as his love for music grew. From the moment he was born, Farrokh stood out, quite literally. He entered the world with 4 extra incisors, something he would later credit for giving him an unusually wide vocal range. And since Zanzibar was still under British rule until 1963, he was born a British subject. On the 2nd of June 1969, after the family had relocated to England, he was officially registered as a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies. Much of Farrokh's early childhood was spent in India, where he first began taking piano lessons at the age of 7, staying with relatives in a home filled with music and culture. In 1954, when he was just 8 years old, he was sent to St. Peter's School, a strict British-style boarding school for boys located in Panchgani, near Bombay, now Mumbai. There, he inherited his father's passion for philately, the collection of stamps, and between the ages of 9 and 12, he built up a personal album filled with rare stamps, many from the British Commonwealth. That same stamp album is now one of the few personal possessions of Mercury housed in a museum proudly displayed at the Postal Museum in London. At 12, Farrokh showed off another growing passion: music. He formed a school band called the Hectics, playing covers of rock and roll legends like Cliff Richard, Elvis Presley, and Little Richard. A former bandmate recalled, the only music he listened to and played was Western pop music. Another friend described his musical talent as almost supernatural, an uncanny ability to listen to the radio and replay what he heard on piano. It was also during his time at St. Peter's that he started going by the name Freddie, a nickname that would soon become synonymous with rock stardom. In February 1963, he rejoined his parents in Zanzibar, moving into their flat after finishing school. But peace didn't last long. Just a year later, in spring 1964, the Zanzibar Revolution erupted, a violent uprising against the Sultan of Zanzibar and his Arab-dominated government. Thousands of ethnic Arabs and Indians were killed in the chaos. The Bulsara family, being both Indian and Parsi, knew they had to leave. They fled to England, escaping the bloodshed and uncertainty of their homeland. They settled in Feltham, a small town about 13 miles west of central London. At first they lived at 19 Hamilton Close, before briefly relocating to 122 Hamilton Road. By late October, they found a more permanent home at 22 Gladstone Avenue, a modest house that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in Freddie's life. He enrolled at Isleworth Polytechnic in West London to study art, later transferring to Ealing Art College, where he pursued graphic art and design. He graduated in 1969, armed with skills that would later prove invaluable, especially when he designed the iconic Queen crest, the visual symbol of the band that would make him a global legend. After graduation, Freddie bounced between jobs and musical experiments. He sold second-hand Edwardian clothes and scarves in Kensington Market, often alongside future Queen drummer Roger Taylor. Taylor once said, "Back then, I didn't really know him as a singer. He was just my mate. My crazy mate. If there was fun to be had, Freddie and I were usually involved." He also worked briefly as a baggage handler at Heathrow Airport, a far cry from the spotlight he dreamed of. Friends from this period remember him as a quiet, shy young man, but always with a deep love for music bubbling beneath the surface. In 1969, Freddie joined a Liverpool-based band called Ibex, which later changed its name to Wreckage. The group played Hendrix-style heavy blues, but it never quite took off. During this time, he lived in a flat above Dovedale Towers, a pub on Penny Lane in Liverpool's Mossley Hill district, a stone's throw from the famous street immortalized in Beatles lore. When Wreckage dissolved, he tried his luck with another band, Sour Milk Sea, based in Oxford, but by early 1970 that group too had broken up. Meanwhile, guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor had been playing together in a band called Smile. Freddie, still using his birth name, Farrokh Bulsara, was a big fan of Smile and often encouraged them to push boundaries, experiment with stagecraft, and explore more ambitious recording techniques. By April 1970, Freddie officially joined forces with May and Taylor, becoming the lead singer of Smile. In 1971, bassist John Deacon completed the lineup, forming what would soon become Queen. Despite hesitation from the other band members and their initial management, Trident Studios, Freddie insisted on naming the band Queen. He explained, "It's very regal, obviously, and it sounds splendid. It's a strong name, very universal and immediate. I was certainly aware of the gay connotations, but that was just one facet of it." Around the same time, he legally changed his surname from Bulsara to Mercury, a bold declaration of identity and ambition. Before the release of Queen's self-titled debut album, Freddie sketched out the design for the band's official logo, the now legendary Queen crest. Drawing inspiration from astrology, he incorporated the zodiac signs of each band member: 2 lions for Leo's John Deacon and Roger Taylor, a crab for Cancer Brian May, and 2 fairies for himself as a Virgo. The lions embrace a stylized letter Q, with the crab perched atop it and flames rising skyward. Below the Q, the fairies are sheltered beneath the lions. Inside the Q sits a crown, and over it all looms a mighty phoenix, symbolizing rebirth and grandeur. The crest bore a striking resemblance to the royal coat of arms of the United Kingdom, particularly in its use of heraldic lions, fitting for a band that would soon claim its own kind of musical monarchy. From Zanzibar to Feltham, from sketching logos in his dorm room to commanding stages around the world, Freddie Mercury's journey was anything but ordinary. And with Queen, he was about to begin crafting a legacy that would echo through time, loud, proud, and unforgettable. Becoming Killer Queen. But before they finally became the legendary Queen we would come to know today, in early 1971, Queen found its final piece, John Deacon. A skilled bassist with a quiet, unassuming presence, Deacon brought more than just musical talent to the band. He was also technically adept in electronics, a trait that would prove invaluable as Queen pushed studio boundaries. With Deacon officially on board, the classic lineup was complete: Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon. Their debut performance together came on the 2nd of July 1971 at a small college in Surrey outside London. Though far from glamorous, the show marked the beginning of something special, a band ready to carve its own path in rock history. To get their sound heard beyond live shows, May reached out to Terry Yaden, an engineer they had worked with during Smile's recording sessions. Yaden had since moved to Delane Lee Studios in Wembley and told the band about an opportunity. The new studio needed groups to test its equipment and acoustics. The Kinks were his first choice, but they couldn't be reached, so he offered the chance to Queen. The band jumped at the opportunity and recorded 5 original songs: Liar, Keep Yourself Alive, Great King Rat, The Night Comes Down, and Jesus. During these sessions, producers John Anthony and Roy Thomas Baker dropped by and were immediately drawn to Keep Yourself Alive. Impressed, they began promoting Queen to record labels, helping push the band closer to a deal. Around this time, promoter Ken Testy caught the attention of Charisma Records, who offered Queen an advance of around £25,000. But the band turned it down, sensing the label would prioritize promoting Genesis over them. Testy then connected them with Norman Sheffield of Trident Studios, who offered a management deal through Neptune Productions, a subsidiary of Trident. This arrangement gave Queen access to Trident's facilities while the management searched for a record deal. Perfect timing, as Trident was expanding into artist management. Taylor later described those early off-peak hours at Trident as gold dust, precious time for a young band learning the ropes. Queen kicked off 1972 with a gig at Bedford College, London, where only 6 people showed up. Discouraged but not defeated, they decided to take a break from live performances for 8 months to focus on their debut album. During the sessions, Queen attended a David Bowie concert with the Spiders from Mars and realized how much pressure they were under. If they didn't make a strong impression with their first album, they risked being overshadowed by the era's rising stars. Co-producers Anthony and Baker clashed frequently with the band, particularly Brian May, over the direction of the recordings. The friction exposed the band's inexperience as they struggled to balance technical perfection with the raw energy of live performance. Baker later referred to the result as kitchen sink overproduction. The debut album ultimately blended heavy metal and progressive rock, with some tracks re-recorded multiple times. The band disliked the final version of The Night Comes Down, so the original Delane Lee demo was used instead. Another track, Mad the Swine, was dropped after no consensus could be reached on the mix. Engineer Mike Stone handled the final mix of Keep Yourself Alive, which became the standout track, and earned him a long-term role in Queen's future projects. By January 1972, the album was complete, but still without a record deal. To generate interest, Trident booked 2 showcase gigs, one at the Pheasantry on the 6th of November and another at the legendary Marquee Club on the 20th of December. Promotion continued into early 1973 when Queen appeared on BBC Radio 1, still unsigned. Finally, in March, Trident struck a deal with EMI Records, setting the stage for the release of Queen. On the 6th of July 1973, Keep Yourself Alive hit the shelves as Queen's debut single, followed a week later by the self-titled album. The iconic front cover featured a live shot of Mercury taken by Roger Taylor's friend, Douglas Puttyfoot. For unknown reasons, Deacon was credited as Deacon John, and Taylor used his full name, Roger Meadows Taylor. Critics responded positively. Rolling Stone's Gordon Fletcher called it superb, and Chicago's Daily Herald praised it as an above-average debut. But despite the praise, the album failed to catch mainstream attention and the single sold poorly. Still, Keep Yourself Alive has since been recognized as a highlight of the album. In 2008, Rolling Stone ranked it 31st in its list of the 100 greatest guitar songs of all time, describing it as an entire album's worth of riffs crammed into a single song. The album eventually went gold in both the UK and the US, a quiet success that laid the groundwork for what was to come. Recording for Queen II began in August 1973, now with regular studio time and growing confidence. May opened the album with the multi-layered guitar intro Procession, while Mercury penned the Fairyfeller's Master Stroke, inspired by the fantastical painting of the same name by Richard Dadd. As the year progressed, Queen toured the UK supporting Mott the Hoople, slowly building a fan base. Their tour culminated in 2 sold-out nights at the Hammersmith Odeon on the 14th of December, playing to a crowd of 7,000 fans. In January 1974, Queen made their way to Australia for the Sunbury Pop Festival. They arrived late and the audience, expecting local acts, jeered them. Freddie Mercury, never one to back down, famously declared before leaving, "When we come back to Australia, Queen will be the biggest band in the world." Queen II was released in March 1974, featuring an iconic black and white photo shot by Mick Rock, modeled after Marlene Dietrich. That image would later inspire the visual style of the Bohemian Rhapsody music video. The album peaked at number 5 on the UK charts, becoming the band's first to chart there. The lead single, 7 Seas of Rye, reached number 10 in the UK, Queen's first official hit. Queen wrapped up their early 1974 UK tour with a memorable performance at the Rainbow Theatre on the 31st of March. Mercury wore a striking tunic designed by Zandra Rhodes, changing into a slashed black top halfway through the show, a moment that perfectly captured the theatrical flair and evolving identity of Queen. From humble beginnings in borrowed studios to commanding stages across the UK, Queen was no longer just a band. They were becoming a phenomenon. Freddie's glam rock outfit. Once Queen started booking more gigs, Freddie Mercury didn't just show up, he arrived. With every performance, his wardrobe became bolder, wilder, and utterly unforgettable. We're talking outfits so outrageous they almost defy description. Looks that weren't just ahead of the 70s curve, they were orbiting a completely different planet. In 1974, The Guardian described one of Freddie's interview ensembles as tight oyster gray satin pants, an antique market cream satin blouse, and a scarlet red Victorian bed jacket. Freddie's stage wardrobe came from everywhere, from second-hand stalls at local markets to high-end designers who finally caught on that this guy wasn't going anywhere. One of the most iconic collaborators was Zandra Rhodes, whose nature-inspired, ultra-colorful designs became a staple for the band. Freddie, ever the perfectionist, wasn't just interested in how clothes looked. He cared about fabric, movement, and how a piece performed under the lights and sweat of a live show. The leotards gave him the freedom to strut, leap, and twirl across the stage like a rock and roll ballerino, which, in many ways, he was. His whole aesthetic dripped with camp. Theatrical, exaggerated, and unapologetically bold. He wasn't trying to blend in, he was trying to mesmerize. And where did he get this vision from? Part of his inspiration came from the past, specifically William Shakespeare and the Elizabethan era, where men in tights and flowing garments were not only accepted, but celebrated on stage. Freddie also drew from ballet, where male dancers wore form-fitting, stretchy costumes designed for movement. In reality, Freddie's fashion wasn't weird or over the top, it was genius. A man 17 steps ahead of everyone else, using clothing to create a spectacle, tell a story, and speak directly to an audience that felt seen through his fearless self-expression. From oversized jumpsuits to futuristic Paco Rabanne leotards, Freddie never stopped pushing style boundaries in the 70s. But by the early 80s, Queen had evolved and so had Freddie. Never one to stagnate, he stitched up his look, chopped off the hair, and slicked it back. The flamboyant glam queen of the 70s was gone, replaced by a sleeker, sharper, more masculine image. Bell-bottoms? Out. Skinny jeans? In. His new style still screamed Queen, though, just with a different kind of swagger. Take the three-piece leather suit he wore minus two pieces, total rebellion wrapped in cool. Or the shirtless sweatband-wearing Olympian vibe that made fans scream and start a trend overnight. Then there's the iconic moment we can't forget, the yellow jacket at Wembley. Bold, bright, and forever burnt into pop culture memory. It's the look that defines Freddie for a generation. Even now, decades after his final bow, his influence lives on. Freddie Mercury may have left the stage, but what about his fashion legacy? It's still taking bows. Live Aid. By early 1985, Queen had been on the road for years. The band was still massive, but they were starting to feel like they were going through the motions. Then came Live Aid, and everything changed. Before that, though, Queen made history in Rio de Janeiro. In January 1985, they headlined 2 nights at the very first Rock in Rio festival, playing to over 300,000 fans each night. The Boston Globe called it mesmerizing. Highlights from both shows were released as Queen, Live in Rio, later broadcast on MTV, and seen by millions around the world. Fresh off that high, Queen launched the Works Tour, selling out arenas across Australia and Japan in April and May. But nothing could prepare them or the world for what was coming next. On the 13th of July 1985, Queen took the stage at Wembley Stadium for Live Aid, the global charity concert watched by an estimated 400 million people, the largest TV audience ever at the time. With 72,000 fans roaring below and billions watching from home, Queen delivered what many still call the greatest live performance in rock history. Bob Geldof, Live Aid's co-organizer, put it best. Queen was absolutely the best band of the day. They just went and smashed one hit after another. It was the perfect stage for Freddie, the whole world. From the moment Mercury stepped into the spotlight, he owned it. He didn't just sing, he commanded. The crowd clapped, sang, and swayed in unison. Elton John, Cliff Richard, journalists from Rolling Stone, The Guardian, MTV, and beyond all agreed. Queen stole the show. Roger Waters, backstage and stunned, said, "Everybody's been buzzing about Queen that I've run into. They had everybody completely spellbound." Freddie's sustained, spine-tingling note during the a cappella intro, that legendary "I-O," became known as the note heard round the world. It wasn't just a great gig, it was a resurrection. Roger Taylor later called it a shot in the arm for the band. Record sales surged, and Queen found themselves back on top. In 1986, Mercury reflected, "From our perspective, the fact that Live Aid happened when it did was really lucky. It came out of nowhere to save us. For sure, that was a turning point. Maybe you could say that in the history of Queen, it was a really special moment." Later that year, Queen dropped the single One Vision and released the complete works, a limited edition box set featuring their full catalog, the 1984 Christmas single, Thank God It's Christmas, and some unreleased material. Early in 1986, they recorded a kind of magic inspired by the film Highlander. Tracks like Princes of the Universe, Who Wants to Live Forever, and Friends Will Be Friends became instant classics, especially the latter, featuring a soaring orchestral arrangement conducted by Michael Kamen. Though it was a huge success in the UK and Europe, the album didn't quite land in North America, peaking at #46 on the Billboard charts. Critics were mixed. Biographer Mark Blake called it a so-so album and a somewhat uneven listening experience. Still, in 2007, Classic Rock ranked it the 28th greatest soundtrack album of all time. That summer, Queen kicked off the Magic Tour, their final tour with Freddie Mercury. Once again joined by touring keyboardist Spike Edney, the band started strong in Stockholm, then smashed attendance records at Slane Castle in Ireland, where 95,000 fans packed the grounds. But one of the most unforgettable moments came behind the Iron Curtain. In Budapest, Queen played to a crowd of 80,000 at the Knebworth, one of the biggest rock concerts ever held in Eastern Europe. The show was released as Hungarian Rhapsody, Queen Live in Budapest, a testament to their growing global reach. All told, more than 1 million people saw Queen live that year, including 400,000 in the UK alone, a record at the time. The peak of the tour came at Wembley Stadium, captured in the live album Queen at Wembley, which has gone 5 times platinum in the US and 4 times platinum in the UK. Tickets sold so fast that extra dates had to be added. Concert promoter Harvey Goldsmith joked, "They seem to have an endless market." Queen couldn't get a third night at Wembley, so they moved to Knebworth Park in Hertfordshire on the 9th of August, 1986. The show sold out within 2 hours, drawing over 120,000 fans, Freddie Mercury's final performance with Queen. As the night closed, the band returned for a haunting encore of God Save the Queen. Dressed in crown and gown, Freddie waved goodbye with a soft, emotional, "Good night and sweet dreams." Behind the scenes, the weight of the moment was already sinking in. Roadie Peter Hintz recalled, "At Knebworth, I somehow felt it was going to be the last for all of us." Brian May remembered Freddie saying plainly, "I'm not going to be doing this forever. This is probably the last time." No one knew exactly how soon the last time would come, but everyone felt it. Queen had reached the summit once more, and now all that was left was the fall. Freddie's final performance. On August 9, 1986, Queen played what would unknowingly be their final concert with Freddie Mercury, a night that has since become one of the most legendary performances in rock history. Performing in front of 120,000 fans at Knebworth Park, the show was the climactic finale of the band's triumphant Magic Tour, and the last time the world would see Freddie Mercury, Brian May, Roger Taylor, and John Deacon together on stage. At the time, none of them knew it would be their final bow as a full unit. 6 years before Freddie's tragic death from AIDS and 11 years before John Deacon would quietly walk away from the band for good. What made this night so unforgettable wasn't just the music or the scale, it was Freddie himself. Dressed in his now iconic military-style yellow jacket, Freddie Mercury stood like a golden sun at the center of it all, regal, radiant, and roaring. That image, captured under the stadium lights, became the defining visual of his career. a man who gave everything to the moment, unaware, or perhaps deeply aware, that time was slipping through his fingers. The day began with grandeur. Shot on film under a blistering August sun, the footage opens with aerial views of London. Then the dramatic sight of Queen's helicopter lifting off from Battersea Helipad, soaring over the Thames, and flying past the hulking silhouette of Battersea Power Station. The band was heading 30 miles north to Hertfordshire, where tens of thousands were already gathering at Knebworth Park. As they landed, the camera caught a now legendary shot. Freddie stepping out of the chopper in a Hawaiian shirt and aviator sunglasses, grinning like he owned the sky. It was pure Mercury magic, effortless cool, wrapped in rock star fantasy. Keyboardist Spike Edney, who toured with the band, later told Rolling Stone that the helicopter ride was such a thrill, the band missed the after-party. Backstage, the energy was electric. In a rare behind-the-scenes clip, Freddie is seen in his dressing room casually asking someone off-camera how long until showtime. 10 minutes, comes the reply. Then, without warning, he launches into an impromptu vocal warm-up, hitting impossible notes, stretching his voice like a seasoned opera singer warming up for the Met. Then, Roger Taylor walks in and joins him. Two legends goofing around, harmonizing like kids in a garage. It was moments like these that made Freddie so special. Not just the power, but the playfulness. When he finally stepped onto the stage, the roar from the crowd was deafening. Over 120,000 people stretched across the field, waving lighters, screaming lyrics, and completely lost in the moment. Freddie, as always, gave them everything. He sang hit after hit, songs that had defined generations. But behind the spectacle, tragedy lurked. That night, amid the euphoria, a fan climbed a lighting tower to get a better view. He fell, landing on another concertgoer who stabbed him in the chaos. By the time St. John ambulance reached him, it was too late. He died. Later, when Freddie learnt of the death, he said something chilling, something that still echoes today. "If people have to die because they want to see us, I'll never perform live again." It was a haunting line, one that carries even more weight knowing what we know now. Though he wouldn't publicly reveal his HIV-positive status until the day before his death in 1991, many close to him believe he already suspected the truth by 1986. And yet, despite the shadows creeping in, Freddie performed like there was no tomorrow. Because maybe, deep down, he knew. Knebworth wasn't just a concert. It was a farewell dressed as a celebration. A final blaze of glory, and at its heart was Freddie Mercury, wearing gold, singing like a god, and giving the world one last unforgettable taste of magic. While Queen would continue to record in private right up to Freddie's death, the band's Knebworth Park performance was their last with their star singer at the helm, but not their last public appearance. Freddie's relationships. Freddie Mercury's heart was as complex as his voice, full of passion, contradiction, and deep love. In the early 1970s, before Queen became a global phenomenon, he found something rare, a real connection with Mary Austin. They met through Brian May in 1969 when Mary was just 19 and Freddie was 23, a year before Queen even formed. A London native born in Fulham, Mary quickly became more than just a girlfriend. She was Freddie's anchor. The two moved in together in a small flat in West Kensington, living the life of young lovers caught up in the wild, creative energy of pre-fame Queen. But by the mid-1970s, things began to change. Freddie started a secret affair with David Minns, an American record executive at Elektra Records, a relationship that marked the beginning of the end for him and Mary. In December 1976, Freddie sat her down and told her the truth. He was gay. Their romantic relationship ended that night, but what replaced it was something even rarer: lifelong friendship. He moved out of their shared home and bought Mary a place of her own near his new address at 12 Stafford Terrace, Kensington. And though they were no longer lovers, Freddie never stopped leaning on her. In fact, he called her his only true friend, Dot. In a 1985 interview, he said this about Mary: "All my lovers asked me why they couldn't replace Mary, but it's simply impossible. The only friend I've got is Mary. And I don't want anybody else. To me, she was my common-law wife. To me, it was a marriage. We believe in each other, that's enough for me." She even helped him choose his final home, Garden Lodge, an 8-bedroom Georgian mansion in Kensington. hidden behind high walls and manicured gardens. Years later, when he made out his will, he left the house to her, telling her simply, "You would have been my wife, and it would have been yours anyway." While living in Munich from 1979 to 1985, a time when he could escape the media glare, Freddie found another kind of freedom. He dove into the city's vibrant gay scene and built a close bond with Austrian actress Barbara Valentin, who starred in the video for It's a Hard Life. At one point, the two lived together, Barbara, her daughter, and Freddie, until he eventually moved into his own apartment. During this period, he also fell deeply for Winfried Winnie Kirchberger, a German restaurateur and one of the most significant loves of his life. Their romance was intense, passionate, and full of comfort. Freddie even lived temporarily in Winnie's apartment and thanked him for board and lodging in the liner notes of his 1985 solo album, Mr. Bad Guy. He wore a silver wedding band given to him by Winnie, a symbol of a love he never publicly declared but clearly cherished. A close friend once described Winnie as Mercury's great love in Germany, a man who gave Freddie a sense of normalcy and peace during a chaotic time. By 1985, Freddie had found yet another soul to share his life with, Jim Hutton, an Irish-born hairdresser whom he openly referred to as his husband. Their relationship was quiet, steady, and full of understanding. Freddie once said of Jim, "I honestly couldn't ask for better." When Freddie was diagnosed with HIV in 1987, Jim stayed by his side, nursing him through the darkest days. He was there when Mercury passed away on November 24, 1991, holding his hand until the very end. Freddie wore a gold wedding band given to him by Jim in 1986 right up until his death. When he was cremated, the ring went with him, a final silent vow between two men who loved without apology. After Freddie's death, Jim left London and returned to Ireland, where he and Freddie had built a private bungalow together, a quiet place meant for peace in the final years. Neither of them expected to be so short. Which Queen song was your favorite? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.